Okay, now I will pass it over to Bob.
All set?
Yes, you are good to go. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. So as Jennifer said, I'm the COO for Saint-Gobain in North America. And my job is operations, for sure. But I think a big part of where Saint-Gobain is going these days is, yes, we're a for-profit, but we are very focused on sustainability, and we're very focused on our employees, and we're very focused on our communities. So a company, an organization like Trellis fits perfectly with that. So for our employees, it allows them to get involved in an organization that makes an impact on the community. It's a great way for them to do other things besides working and really make a difference. The garden here, people are very, very committed to the garden. It seems like every year they ask for more money for the garden, but that's okay. That just shows their commitment to the garden. I know how passionately Dennis and Leah feel about the organization, and I've worked very closely with both of them for a long time. But getting back to the fit between Saint-Gobain and Trellis, I mean, it's perfect in terms of the volunteer aspect that we very much treasure. Sustainability, incredibly important to our company. That's just really the core of what we want to do in terms of, making the planet a safer and better place. And then what's really good is in just terms of educating all of us in terms of the value of nutrition and things like that. I was telling Dennis a little bit earlier that I have two grandsons, 7 and 9. Their mother has a big garden. She actually started a compost business, and it's wonderful to see how the younger generation values getting their hands dirty and helping out. So I think this is a wonderful organization for that aspect also. So this is a great way for community engagement for our company, for our employees. It's very important for us to give back to the community, and this is one way for us to do that. All I would say in closing, if you're a prospective partner, the impact of this organization on our people and our company is significant. And it goes well beyond kind of the dollars that are important to a profit company like us. It really allows us to, help make a difference for our community. So I'd be, pleased to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you, Bob. Really, really appreciate it. And I would say that the feeling is incredibly mutual, and we feel very grateful as an organization to have the opportunity to partner with a company like Saint-Gobain and have the benefit of the energy and the enthusiasm that you all have for this work. I'm going to actually then turn it over to Leah Lobello, and I'd like to introduce Leah. So Leah is one of our board members, and her expertise is helping companies develop and execute communications and marketing strategies that help to create bottom line growth. Leah was most recently the Director of Communications for Saint-Gobain and handled internal, external, and reputational communications. And she's going to be sharing a lot more with you all about the details of our partnership and how it has benefited the community at large. Before I turn it over, though, Leah, the one thing I want to say is I also want to introduce Dennis Wilson at the same time, who is the VP of EHS and Sustainability for Saint-Gobain North America. And Dennis is also on our board. Dennis, wave. Say hi. Hi, there's Dennis. So we have great representation here today from Saint-Gobain. And Dennis, as you know, you should feel free to chime in. I know Leah won't mind. And anything you have to say, I'm sure would be super valuable in this conversation. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Leah, and take it away.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you again, everyone, for being here and hearing some of the great parts of our partnership with Trellis. As mentioned, my name is Leah Lobello, Director of Communications for Saint-Gobain, and I handled internal, external, and reputational work for the company. And Trellis really sat at the intersection of all that, and we'll talk about that more as the presentation goes on. I just want to pause for something for a moment that Bob said, though, which is community relations and the value of that. I think we've all experienced that. You know, we've always experienced it, but the last 18, 20 months have really shown us what community is all about. And Trellis, you know, in our relationship with Trellis, we operate as a manufacturer, we operate in communities around the country at their behest. We are there because they welcome us into their lives and the fabric of their towns and cities. We often operate in rural environments, but that is also no different for our headquarters, which is in Malvern and being part of Chester County. And so when we started with Trellis in 2015, it was really with that in mind when we started the garden that you saw behind Jennifer. It was really because we knew we were in need to give back to Chester County just as much as we would encourage any of our sites to do so. And the garden has paid us back that in tenfold. And we'll get into some of the other parts and pieces of our relationship. But I did just want to mention that because it was sort of the why that got us to some of the great additional work that we're doing today. And I will just also mention, in terms of where Jennifer's sitting, the garden's place at the campus is also very purposeful. What you can see is Jennifer sitting in an entire wing of our building, and that whole wing overlooks the garden. So we realize not everyone has the opportunity to do that, but even the placement for us was purposeful so that as our employees, both who participate and don't, were having meetings in these rooms, they could see literal fruits of labor, pun intended. Visitors would be able to get a small slice of visibility into some of the work happening there. Became a conversation point. So just a little extra oomph that we put behind even where we place the garden beds. As I mentioned, though, the garden, while it's the cornerstone, the Food for All program that we participate in is the cornerstone. We have grown the relationship in the last few years, and we'll talk about some of these parts and pieces, but we sponsor some of the additional programs Jennifer touched on. The board and committee seats were a benefit that we received, the ones that Dennis and I hold. We've hosted, and hopefully we'll be hosting again post-COVID someday, the youth on site. We recently stood up matching gift funds for employees. Anyone who wants to donate, the company matches in our system. And then we've also been able to expand some of our relationships in the community thanks to Trellis. So we'll get into all that as I mentioned, but before we do that, wanted to give you a little bit more of an up close and personal look at the garden. Quick funny story before we cut to David Ryle, our master gardener. But we really, I think, as everyone was hoping to do this in person rather than virtually, but because of the constant waves of our friend COVID, the Delta variant and whatnot, we realized in mid-September, early September, that wasn't going to be possible. So we brainstormed some additional ideas. We had this big party planned garden party with cocktails and hors d'oeuvres and tours and all sorts of tutorials for things. And so as we started to pivot, we thought to ourselves, well, how can we still do that but virtually? So we came up with this Oscar-worthy idea. And when we contacted video companies to help us execute that idea, the services were well north of $10,000. And if I've learned anything from Bob Pinero, it is do not, just willy-nilly sign contracts for money that you can't provide huge ROI on. So while we were thinking about how to work through that, we came up with this other idea, a little more cost effective, so you know that your dollars are always thought of in the highest esteem. But we thought of this other idea with David live in the garden via some different types of technology, I'll call it. But I say all that because if there are any technical issues, bear with us. Just know we had the Academy Awards in mind if we had had our way, but we hope that this is just as good and it does give you a flavor, pun intended again, for what we're growing at Saint-Gobain. So I'll turn it over to David.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be standing here live in the Saint-Gobain garden. As Leah said, getting to this point was quite a journey and very exciting. We had, as Leah also said, we had hopes of doing a big soiree here with all of you in attendance, and maybe post-pandemic, those days will return for us. But as you can see, we're standing here in the incredibly beautiful garden here at Saint-Gobain, which Trellis worked together with Saint-Gobain to install in the spring of 2017. We have 25 partnerships throughout the region that have gardens like this one. Some are small, some are big. Trellis for Tomorrow works with partners of all sizes, from corporations to businesses to municipal groups to faith-based institutions to community groups. And the focus is always the same. How can we work in spaces like this to create meaningful impact, meaningful opportunities for service and for community, for us to get more connected to each other and more connected to our communities? So when Saint-Gobain started talking with us about this garden, we got very excited, and it has been my pleasure to be a part of watching this garden get designed, get installed, be managed by scores of very passionate, very amazing gardeners and employees here at Saint-Gobain who have committed so much of their time and energy to making this an effective initiative. And as you can see, the garden behind me is still bursting with life. These gardens are not just a space for us to come together or for us to have community service or for us to meet other people that we work with. All of those things are wonderful and amazing and really create bonds that help organizations like Saint-Gobain benefit from what a garden like this can offer. But as you will learn more, the food that is grown in these gardens is having an unbelievable impact in our region, where food insecurity and food injustice is a real issue. Saint-Gobain, just in 3 or 4 years of having this garden, has produced over 12,000 pounds of organic produce, which has gone 90% has gone back into the community and had a tremendous impact on food security issues, getting food to people. And even during the pandemic, when campuses like Saint-Gobain are a little bit more restricted because of the pandemic, this garden, as you can see, has stayed incredibly productive. One thing you'll notice is the unique design of this garden. We worked together with Saint-Gobain to design this garden. This is a sunburst pattern of framed raised beds. Not only is this important to Saint-Gobain in its hundreds-year-old history, starting in France, and some of the things that are important to them as a company, but I also think that this pattern of beds sort of going out into the community really represents not just Saint-Gobain's commitment to our community, but also the work that we're doing here at Trellis for Tomorrow. I'm going to take a quick look at some of these crops just to give you an idea of what's growing here in the fall. We have some beautiful Asian greens. This is one of the things that our highly trained agricultural specialists at Trellis for Tomorrow work with our partners to make sure that these beds are as productive as possible. And we work with a 3-season plan in the gardens. So what you see here is our 3rd season of planting. Each bed is producing about 110 to 125 pounds of organic produce every year. And each one of these beds is a meeting place, a meeting of the minds, a meeting of the hearts, a meeting of service, a meeting of opportunity, a meeting of new connections. And it's a way for your organization to meet your community where those needs are greatest. You'll see that all of these beds are framed raised beds. In addition to designing these spaces, we generally work with framed raised beds, which elevates the soil a little bit, makes it a little bit tidier to work in these spaces, to do the harvesting, to get things out. One thing you may not see, but I'll point out anyways, is we also work to create drip tape irrigation systems, which make these gardens much more easy to manage. And behind me in the distance, you might notice that we work together with Saint-Gobain to ensure that a deer fence was put in, which is, we have lots of furry friends that like to eat these things too. Saint-Gobain is a participant in the Food for All program. And so we like to kind of embrace the fact that there's plenty of food for all, not just the people that are struggling with food security issues, but also our furry friends as well. But we try to keep that a little bit to a minimum. So, you know, working in partnership with organizations like Saint-Gobain, big companies, small companies, faith-based groups, and municipals is leading to these incredible yields. I'm going to grab one of these peppers because it's been catching my eye. The food that's grown in these gardens is having a really big impact in our community. And talking with us about the possibility of partnership, whether that takes the shape of a garden like this incredible space here at Saint-Gobain, or sponsoring our youth programs, or working together to sponsor a sister garden. A lot of our partners have done that as well, where we're actually setting up gardens in food deserts, making sure that food gets into the community. It are all different ways that our partners have stood with us during this time and have found meaningful engagement through these gardens. So we're just thrilled to have you. I'm going to eat this pepper now. I'm going to turn it back over to everybody else on the call. But actually, I think I'm going to take questions. So if there's any questions while I'm standing here in the garden and before I dive into this genuine, authentic red bell pepper, which was actually, that was not staged, I'll take any questions that you might have.
All right, everybody. Well, I'm waiting for you to send some questions our way in the chat. I am just going to ask David a question that we get very often, which is, you know, David, our organization is really interested in Food for All, but we don't have a lot of gardening experience. So how can we make that happen? Can you answer that a little bit while people are thinking of their questions?
We get that question a lot. Wondering about your level of expertise or experience in a garden is not something that you have to worry about. In addition to having a staff that is extremely well trained and well versed in social impact causes like around food justice and engaging with the community, a good number of our staff, including myself, have a background in organic agriculture and bring that experience to bear on the creation and management of these spaces. So the garden that you see here is not sort of we drop it on you and walk away. It's actually an ongoing relationship where we provide meaningful ongoing service every month. We're out here on site with our partners. Now, this has changed a little bit during the pandemic here at Saint-Gobain. Trellis has been welcomed into this space to actually manage this garden through the pandemic, and we're making sure that this produce is growing, that it's thriving, and that it's getting back into the community through our youth programs, which has been an incredible pivot, an incredible partnership. But we bring a lot of expertise and know-how and resources to bear so that these gardens are as seamless as possible, and so that the impact kind of gets contained within your members, your employees, your constituents, the people that you're serving, and that the impact is heightened for the community that you're trying to reach. That's a great question, though. I also wanted to point out behind me, we put in some fruit trees here at Saint-Gobain a couple years ago. So we're watching red delicious apples and Asian pears and peaches come in, which is a big request from our, we work with about 45 recipient agencies that work to get the food into the community. And beyond showing people how to garden, making sure that the gardens are growing, we also foster new connections between your organization and those agencies. So we make sure that you get connected with agencies that are serving people within your area. And one thing that we get asked for a lot is fruit. And so we are starting to increasingly grow fruit in these gardens. It's a great question, though.
David, we have a few people asking about space. So beyond the businesses having the gardening experience, you know, how much space is really needed for a Food for All garden?
We have gardens of all different sizes. To become a participant in the Food for All program as such, you need about enough space for 6 of these beds, which is not a whole lot of space. It's only a few hundred square feet for a garden that size. Clearly, this garden is much bigger, and there's actually room for us to add more gardens. So I can appreciate why the gardeners here are always asking for more resources to make something like that happen, which will increase the impact. But in terms of space needs for what a garden needs to be, I would say about 400 to 500 square feet is all you need of space that gets decent sun, access to water. One of the first things that we do in conversations with potential partners is come and do a site assessment with you and take a look at what space you have available and how we might best utilize that. That said, we are and have explored interesting alternatives like tower gardens that make use of limited space and can kind of be a highlight for how your organization is exploring new solutions to some of the biggest issues that are facing our community at this time, including food insecurity and how we feed ourselves. Tower gardens is a good example of one of those innovations.
Thank you, David.
Jennifer, I think Dennis had something he was going to chime in here.
That's great.
The only thing I would say is, you know, from the sustainability angle of things, as you heard, I'm responsible for sustainability for Saint-Gobain in North America. The garden has really been a great place for our employees to engage in sustainability, particularly from the social side of things. And through this COVID period, David mentioned, you know, Trellis has been really doing a great job of helping us manage this when we haven't had a lot of employees on site, right? But, you know, I still think the impact you know, from my perspective of really feeling great about the company that you work for, right? I mean, during the COVID period of time, we saw people lining up around the block of food banks in order to be able to get very, very basic needs, right? So I personally feel pretty good about working for a company that's sending food to food banks to be able to support those very basic needs in that time. And then the last thing I'll say is, I mean, just from personal experience, during a really hard day, nothing gets you out of your own head better than going out and spending a little time with your hands in the dirt. So it really has been a great partnership. We do have people that are very passionate about this. We hope to even grow that further once we're back in the office in a more normal fashion. But again, it's been a great partnership. Oh, the one other thing I'll mention too is I consider myself to be very much a gardening novice, and I've learned a lot from David, including the kids that he's brought in to kind of share, you know, things that they've done in the other gardens that Trellis has. You know, that message from these kids that are part of the program, you know, I think has been pretty impactful on a lot of our employees to know that it's not just us that's doing this, right? It's kids that are getting an education, getting out from behind an iPad or an iPhone or whatever, in learning things that are really life skills. So again, great partnership. I agree with everything that Leah, David, and Bob said here.
Thank you so much for mentioning that, Dennis. I just want to talk on one thing on that, is that the produce that's grown here this year during the pandemic and last year actually went directly to our youth participants, who then engaged with their own community members to make sure that that food got in for their front doors. So a lot of something that is a big barrier for people that are struggling with food insecurity and hunger is going and standing in line at a food bank or a food pantry. And if we can create programs that can bypass that and bring more dignity into our food system while alleviating that need, all the better. And we couldn't have done that without partnerships like Saint-Gobain during this time. So, you know, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, but that's one of the ways that Saint-Gobain has really stood with us, and we're so thrilled to have a garden like this one. So thank you. I think at this point, I'll pass it back to the main room. And thank you for joining me in the garden. I look forward to seeing you out here. If you don't have a garden like this one, give us a call. We'll set up a time to talk. But if you're from Saint-Gobain, I'm looking forward to seeing you out here. And until then, I'm going to enjoy these peppers, and we'll see you back in the main room.
Thanks, David. Really appreciate it. And we're going to turn it back to Leah, but I also wanted to mention really quickly, there was a couple of questions still floating around in the chat, and Jennifer might have had some as well directed to her. There will be breakout sessions later, optional breakout sessions for anybody who's interested in talking about any aspect of what we're going to talk about today more deeply. So hold the questions and we will absolutely get to them at the end. So go ahead, Leah.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say one thing. I misintroduced David. He's our senior programs director. So he is a master gardener, but he also works, as you just heard, directly with the youth. Very special job being both the master gardener and keeping those kids engaged throughout the programming year. So David does incredible work for the organization. I just want to make sure I made that correction. So now that you've seen the garden, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. This is a graphic that we prepared. It is, let me just make it full size for everybody. Talking while doing, never the easiest. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. Okay, I saw a thumbs up. Thank you, Jennifer. After all this time, still never sure if you're doing it right, which is pretty wild. So this is a 2019 graphic. So these numbers will be bigger as we update it throughout the last, year and a half since COVID began. But just wanted to dial in on a couple key numbers now that you have a sense of our garden. So since 2017, as I mentioned, we've had the plot in place. And since that time, and this is again higher than it says here, but more than 8,500 pounds of produce has been grown harvested and donated to help those struggling with food insecurity right in our area. These make healthy meals, as David mentioned. People who need to use food pantries often don't find some of that beautiful produce that was just behind him. So being able to provide that option in that scenario, as I know something as both a volunteer in the garden and board member, has been incredibly meaningful, especially when we also those images from the early days of COVID, which are still happening, by the way, just not on TV. And 90%, just to kind of switch gears and over to the work piece, which David also touched on, and Dennis as well, that work is done by Saint-Gobain employees. Even though we have not been in our building, we have had a contingent of people who have been going out there on a regular basis. But when we were full force in the building, you at any given time, you would see somebody out there weeding or harvesting or weighing or just checking on things. As Dennis mentioned, and even as Bob talked about, that ability to get away from your computer, get your hands dirty, get some fresh air, get in the dirt a little bit, had a profound impact on everyone who went out there. And even if you weren't necessarily interested in gardening yourself or getting sort of your hands in the dirt, not everyone is. One of the things I found as I kind of came back in and shared with my colleagues, hey, how I spent my lunch hour, hey, what were you doing out there? I saw you from the conference room. You know, the spread of that word was just as impactful. We kind of saw this a little bit in the chat, but that garden also does more than just produce vegetables. We planted pollinating plants and other things that contribute to the ecosystem. As you can probably tell from listening to David, it's a very meticulous, thoughtful plan about what goes into that. The seasonality is ensured of different fruits and vegetables to make sure that that soil is maximized, really not a cent or a moment of time wasted, and making sure that it is as productive as it can be. And even though we are having a slightly warmer fall than I think we would all prefer, that garden then is producing the majority of the year, which is also pretty awesome. And then, as you heard, we've also added some fruits and other things that we didn't necessarily have at the beginning into that space. And then I'll just point you to the bottom here. We had about 25 gardeners on a regular basis. Whenever we harvested or planted or did something fun, that number tended to tick up, but about 25 people who were managing the garden on a daily basis, extremely passionate. I have a feeling once we're back in full force in our building, we'll see that increase, because I know there's been a lot of home gardening increases since the pandemic began. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot more people out there come our return. That has produced 2,400, more than 2,400 pounds of organic produce just in 2019 alone, but more than 8,500 since we started. And that produce had a direct impact on almost 10,000 meals. There's a stat that we use, I think it's for every pound of organic produce that you put in a pantry, you can positively impact 4 meals. So there's a direct correlation to the poundage to the healthy meal impact. And since 2017, that's more than 34,000 meals, which is pretty awe-inspiring for just a few short years when you think about it. So I'm going to stop sharing. If there are any questions, I'll be able to see the chat again. And then before I turn it back over, I just wanted to share a couple more points here. Let me just bring back up my notes because there's a lot. So I mentioned that Food for All and becoming a partner at the outset was sort of the cornerstone of our engagement. I was the communications person at Saint-Gobain, and so that's always sort of at the forefront of how I think about what we can do. And I think throughout the pandemic, we've learned that employees, if nothing else, they want to be engaged in their work. They want to be engaged in their workplace. As Dennis talked about, as Bob touched on, Saint-Gobain's purpose is to make the world a better home. Trellis is the work we do with Trellis is an embodiment of that. We are literally making our community a better home for those that we are able to impact with our growth. In terms of the ROI, though, of that, we were able to constantly communicate again with a garden that produces that much. But even if it doesn't, just even one bed would give enough content from a communications or internal perspective to storytell. You know, where is the food going? Taking pictures of the whole life cycle of the growth of the vegetables and fruits. We shared that internally. We shared it on social media. We talked about it when we had interviews with our executives. So a lot of ROI in terms of how we were engaging in the community. Say nothing of the mental health attributes that we've also touched on. But based on the success of the Food for All partnership, we then started to expand. We became a partner and sponsor with some of the youth programs, and I know Jennifer will go into that a little bit further. And the funds originally came from our foundation, but now come from a mix of the corporate coffers and the foundation because of the expansion of our work. And depending on the level of sponsorship that people are thinking about as they kind of hear us here, I can say unequivocally that the Trellis team is willing to work with your organization however you need or see fit to make sure that your level of participation fits and is maximized to the nth degree. They've been an excellent partner for helping us sort of figure out how our dollars can go even further based on some of the other programs that they have. Dennis and I are the embodiment of this. We are board members because of our work in the garden and how it inspired us to get to know Trellis better. In the last 18 months, I've told the Trellis team many times, it's provided so much meaning when you felt so hopeless at home and you felt like, everything, on TV was so sad. At least Trellis and the work we were doing here was a thing that you could say and our employees could say made them feel good. It's a huge reason why I joined the board, just to bring some meaning outside of that professional realm I was engaging into my personal life and the relationships with the fellow board members, the corporations that we're partners with, the kids, has just been an incredible balm and what's been a very interesting 3 or 4 years for all of us. Moving though more towards some business attributes that we are latching onto, and again, especially post-COVID as we come out of that, we are hosting more and more youth at Saint-Gobain, and as I talked about a few moments ago, we really operate in communities at their behest. Part of that is making sure the talent pipeline is full of people who want to work at Saint-Gobain because they believe us to be a good corporation, whether it's locally in Malvern or other areas around the country. So there's a twofold bonus. So we have youth who can come, we can meet them and sort of see how the programs are rolling out, but then they get to know us as a company and see the things we make. And maybe one day when they're buying a house or when they are contracting, or maybe they want to pursue a career path in the construction business, they have some affinity for us and our brands. And so there's definitely a two-way street that we've seen, and having the youth come to our site and get to know us just as much as we're getting to know them. Hopefully in the future that leads to even maybe an intern program where we bring some more hands-on experience to those youth in terms of some of the industry things that we can teach in turn. Mentioned a little this, and I see my colleague Julie Vacrat on the line here, but we stood up this past year the ability to have matching funds. So if anybody in our organization wants to donate to Trellis personally, the company now has a very simple system by which they will match that donation, which is really great in terms of just the overall impact that we can provide. There's also been some other neat expansions into the community. So via the relationship we have with Trellis, who is headquartered in Phoenixville, in a building that also holds an organization called Anne's Heart, we became aware that Anne's Heart needed a ceiling, and we are a manufacturer of ceilings. So through the relationship with David, he came one day and mentioned that this was a pretty light lift. Honestly, it was not that much square footage that was required. We had it in supply. We donated it. They installed it. It looks amazing. If anyone finds themselves in Phoenixville and wants to take a peek, the space is beautiful. That is our ceilings in there. And Anne's Heart was phenomenal in turn about giving us signage and props for that donation. It's an amazing organization that provides community spaces for families and kids in Phoenixville. Definitely worth checking out if you find yourself in that community. But Phoenixville, again, to turn to a business reason, is obviously a community on the rise. So having a presence in Phoenixville, 20 minutes away from our headquarters, where people see the Saint-Gobain name, see, what we've donated, and maybe it causes them to look at us, a slightly different way, whether it's for a job or for a home project. There's definitely some two-way streets there that we've discovered that have been really wonderful. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, that's a lot of progress for 4 short years. We're trying to be creative about the ways we continue to think about our programming and what we do. And again, just to close it out for me personally, I moved from New York City to Chester County, PA. It was quite the whiplash for me. My experience gardening, much like Dennis, was basil on my windowsill in Queens. Not exactly, a rough or troublesome crop to grow. So when I got to Saint-Gobain and the campus and saw that I could go and fulfill my gardening dreams out in the garden, it was a no-brainer for me. And as I mentioned, it was a huge boon for my mental health. But it also led me to this amazing organization, being a board member, getting to know these wonderful people that you're hearing speak after me. And I can't speak highly enough, both as putting on my corporate hat and putting on my personal hat, what a great organization this is, and how willing they are to partner with every single person on this call if you are interested in learning more. So thank you for your time. Thank you for hearing me out on our Saint-Gobain pieces, and I will turn it back over to Jennifer.
All right, thank you, Leah. That was really wonderful, and a very robust and full view of the relationship that we have developed together. And I really appreciate you going with it and having walked that journey with us thus far. And I'm looking forward to it growing, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended. That's the wonderful thing about working in this space. Like, there's plenty of puns in the whole gardening thing. But anyway, I am actually going to talk very briefly before I turn it over to a few of our other partners to talk about their relationship with us, but they might mention a little bit more about our youth programs. And so I just wanted to give those of you on the call who don't know much about that aspect of Trellis a sense of what those youth programs are all about. So I'm going to give you a very quick view. I'm trying to share my screen here, so give me 1 second. A quick view of what that looks like, and we're going to do a short video so you can stop listening to us talk for a few minutes. Give me 1 second here. Okay, can you see my screen? Yes? Wonderful. Okay, so basically Trellis has, as I mentioned initially, a number of programs where we work with youth. And the intention of that is to encourage them to grow, to become their best selves, and to become agents of change in their world and in the world around them. So we have 3 programs. The one that you'll probably hear the most about is Youth Seed Enterprise. And this is a program for youth aged 13 to 18. It's an earn while you learn program, which basically means that the youth receive educational grants for the time that they work with us. So it does a couple of things for youth that are too young to have jobs where they might make an hourly wage. It allows them to get a sense of what it means to be responsible and to work hard for a wage, or in this case, a grant. But it also, for youth that are older that may have, sort of feel some pressure to make money, whether it's to support their family or to do what they want with it, it allows them to continue with the program because we try to keep them year over year so they can grow with us, keep them with the program. The program is focused obviously on gardening and enabling these youth to grow within their own community. As David mentioned, we're bringing, actually I think it's in the video, I'm remembering now that he says it in the video, you'll hear it in a minute. We are now bringing youth from instead of bringing them from their community to a garden, we actually are creating the garden in their neighborhood and in their community. So we teach a lot within the garden, and then they work within that garden to get that food out into the community for families that need it. But they're also learning with us quite a bit about career readiness skills and how to make an impact in the world and how that feels to have meaning and purpose in the work that you do. This year, we formalized our leadership track, which means that we have a very structured process whereby youth move from being apprentices to junior leaders to senior team leaders, and then ultimately, hopefully, move into an internship type of arrangement, or potentially as to be hired as Trellis staff. So our work is really to continue to move through with these kids so they can realize their greatest potential. And this slide just has a little bit of some of the things that we measure every year with our youth in terms of the knowledge that they're gaining and the skill skill sets that they're gaining. And you can see some of the gains that they made this year in the work that they did with Trellis. So that's just a little bit of a sense. We had 50 youth participants across 4 cohorts, managing 5 garden sites this year. So a pretty robust program. And I'm actually going to pause here, and if I can, and Grace, if you wouldn't mind queuing up the video, people can get a little bit of a better sense of this Youth Seed Enterprise program.
All right, can everybody see the screen?
Mm-hmm.
You learn a lot about your food, and it just generally makes it a positive experience.
You really can come learn a lot of stuff. You can make a lot of friends. It's just a great place to be in. It's a great environment.
Since 2002, Trellis has done a number of different youth programs. In recent years, we've really sort of zeroed in on teen development. The Youth Seed Enterprise program is one of our sort of flagship programs right now. A few years ago, we made a transition. Instead of taking these kids out of their community to these farms, what if we brought the farms to the communities, as to where the kids live?
Watching them get their hands dirty from sort of seeding stuff and planting plants all the way through the process to harvesting. I think it's really satisfying for some of them to actually, eat the finished product of their labor.
We have 5 garden locations with 4 cohorts in 2021. Grew about 8,000 pounds of organic produce, which got, right back into the community where they live. A lot of these kids were taking the food home. It's just been really exciting to see this program grow over the last several years.
I'm a humongous introvert, but being here in the summer kind of helped me come out of my shell a lot. Yeah, Trellis is really fun.
It just gives me a better idea on what I'm doing and what I should be doing, and how to improve as a leader.
3 or 4 years in, now we're seeing 16 and 17-year-old kids step into leadership roles, really owning their responsibilities and starting to mentor and take in young people under their wings and show them the ropes. But seeing these young people develop and seeing them become who they are becoming is one of the real thrills of Trellis for Tomorrow.
They improve their social skills, they improve also maybe leading a little group.
I think the program in general is just a good, solid program for kids. And Chase is only 14 and he's excited about trying it out next year. I'm glad to see him be excited about this kind of thing.
Many of our Food for All partners and other business and corporate partners have really stood with this program and helped it grow, particularly during the pandemic, to make sure that the produce that's grown in gardens like this one here at Saint-Gobain are getting into the community by way of these youth programs and these cohorts. The youth actually participate in helping us create some strategic partnerships within their community to get the food out.
We worked on how to make the program better for the next year. Also, we take a lot of time to learn about systems.
We do most of the work literally with our hands. That was a nice surprise.
There's always a lot of ways that we can do more together. Partnering with us, collaborating with us, starting conversations with us is one of the ways that programs like the Youth Seed Enterprise can grow and spread, and we can do more. We're always looking for new opportunities to work together with our partners in the community.
Coming back. All right. So now you have a sense of the Youth Seed Enterprise program. That particular garden that you were looking at was our garden in Phoenixville, and that was our fall group. Usually there's about 18 youth together in that garden during the summer. Interestingly enough, that garden this summer was mostly, David, what was it, 14, 15 young men, correct? And mostly men in that group?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm having technical difficulties. Yes, that particular cohort was a little bit more heavily populated with young men, but interestingly, across the board, that program was pretty evenly mixed when it came to the demographics, including gender, which we were really pleased to see because it's very representative of the community that we're serving.
Thank you. All right, so just a little bit more on the youth programs. So as the youth progress through the leadership tracks and stay with us year over year, one of the opportunities that they have, and also youth that come to us through other channels, is the Youth Leadership Extension Program, which is basically an internship program where Trellis places youth in internships with nonprofits or organizations like Saint-Gobain that have a sustainability or a mission focus component of their work. We pay the interns, they're on our payroll, and we also support them in terms of, we do weekly one-on-one meetings with them, weekly group meetings, we do workshops on resume building, on LinkedIn, on networking. This year, one of our board members did a session doing headshots where he took their photographs, so they all had great headshots for their LinkedIn page. So this program started 2 years ago. We've had over 20 interns, paid internships placed in that 2-year period. We've had 2 interns move into permanent positions as a result of that, right out of their internship. And 100% of our host sites have said that they would continue the program. So we're really looking forward to this growing. And this is another opportunity where we could find placements with organizations in our midst with interns that we have vetted and worked with and really know well. And then, you know, I have 2 screens and I really feel like I need 3. Okay, so the last one is Tempest. So this is our annual Young Entrepreneurs Conference. And it's really an opportunity for young people to get a taste of entrepreneurship and get excited about it and recognize that it's a path that's available to them and not only to wealthy individuals that, you know, are bankrolled or whatever, that this is something that any community member can do. And they come for a day, sometimes 2 days, and they engage with local entrepreneurs, oftentimes that look like them, that are starting businesses in their community, in their neighborhood. They learn what that entrepreneurship path looks like, as well as specific skills that would help them start their business. A lot of times we have youth in these conferences that have already started their own business. You'd be amazed at how many high school students have their own business. It's really incredible. So this is a lot of fun. This year we turned virtual, this past year, of course, and we even had global participation in the Tempest conference. So this is yet another opportunity for businesses in the area to get involved with Trellis. So with that, I am going to actually turn it back over to Jennifer Salvo, who is, once I stop sharing, who is going to tell us a little bit more about how you can get more information about Trellis and working with Trellis. And then after that, we'll move into some breakout groups.
Yes, so hello again, everybody. So you know, you've had a great time being able to hear about our specific relationship with Saint-Gobain and all the facets of that relationship. But now we're going to take a minute to hear from some of our other partners and the kind of relationship we have with their organization. So we're going to hear from 3 speakers, great partners with Trellis, who are going to take a minute to tell you about that. So I am first going to introduce David Brenfleck, who is our garden champion, the Food for All program at SAP America. And while David takes a minute to talk, I'm just going to show you guys a little image of their garden over at SAP. So Dave, I'll pass it over to you now.
Oh, thank you. I wish it looked like that right now. So we started, my name is Dave Brenfleck. I work for SAP. And we've been in the program since 2013. And we usually average about 2,000 pounds, between 2,000 and 2,400 pounds each year. We have about 26 beds. And the partnership with Trellis has been amazing. Each year, our facilities management agrees to usually up the ante a little bit and donate a little bit more to the program because we want to help other sister gardens expand, as well as some of the challenges that we had on our campus. We shut down completely, so the campus was completely closed down. Our badges were basically shut off, so we weren't even allowed on the campus. We tried to get approval to let Hayden and Dave get on the campus to even help us manage the garden themselves. Two people running 26 beds. I think only those two guys could do that. But we literally, when we kicked off in 2013, we had 97 volunteers. We had a nice big group, and I was excited because I was in charge of all of these volunteers. Well, I don't know if it was me or I don't know if it was all the work or the heat, but we dwindled down to about 6 people. So to this day, we do have like a core group, and I actually like working with these guys because you really get to know them a lot better when it's the same group. But it's a great opportunity. The garden, I feel, is because you run into people that you might not normally meet within your office. And so I'm in the support organization, but I get people from HR and finance, and they're people that I normally wouldn't engage with intentionally, but it's a nice way to have a common ground where everybody is an equal. And it's really nice when we do a campus tour. A lot of the people that come through here, whether they're clients or people just visiting the campus, they always ask about the garden. And they're very interested in what we're growing and what we do with the donations. So I also live in Phoenixville, and we donate to PAX, which is a Phoenixville area. What is it? PACS, Community Services.
Community Services, yeah.
Sorry. And then also our church has a large pantry. So Trellis has been very kind to us and even donated a garden to our church. So we were able to give organic free vegetables to some of the people that come in as clients. And then also when we kicked off in 2013, I moved to Phoenixville, and it inspired me to grow a garden in my backyard. So I worked with them to get the garden beds through, well, it was Triscos at the time, but Trellis for Tomorrow. And I put in the drip tape and everything. So Dave has been a big help in terms of teaching me what I thought I knew about gardening. I didn't realize how much there was to learn, but it's been a very educational and very rewarding experience. And unfortunately, our garden is kind of closed at the moment, but they really they turned on a dime, and we're able to use the resources that we purchased in terms of the seedlings and the seeds, and they were able to start other gardens and get youth involved and be able to produce, I think, even more than we would have in our own garden. So it's been very productive.
Over 2,000 this year.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear all that.
Sorry, Dave. I was just saying over 2,000 pounds from what you supported. We've done over 2,000 pounds this year.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm amazed because I know how much work that is for us to get that level. So yeah, you guys really shifted quickly, and it's been a pleasure working with Trellis. You guys are very easy and approachable, and anytime we have questions, it's always a fast response. And I've been introduced to more vegetables than I realized were in existence. And that stirrup hoe, I don't know why I had to be in my 40s to meet my first stirrup hoe, but it's now my favorite tool. I use it at home all the time. And yeah, it's the kind of things that you learn, you don't realize that it's that broad of an education. But I wanted to thank you for inviting me to speak, because I'm very passionate about your program, and I'm glad you're in Phoenixville. That makes me proud as well. But thank you again. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything.
Thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate it. If anyone has questions for Dave specifically and you want to put them in the chat, we'll make sure that they get answered. And next, we're going to pass it over to Terry Brett, who is the CEO and founder of Kimberton Whole Foods. And I'm going to just briefly share with you. I'm sure many of you have been there, several locations. This is their website, check them out. But Terry is going to take a few minutes to talk to you about the relationship between Trellis for Tomorrow and Kimberton Whole Foods. So Terry, I'll pass it over to you.
Am I unmuted at this point?
You're all set.
Well, I'm really looking forward to working directly with David next year. We're planning on building a 3,200 square foot greenhouse on property that I purchased from the Kimberton Waldorf School, which was part of the 7 Stars Biodynamic Farm. but David truly is a workhorse. And but you know, our relationship with Trellis has just been maturing year by year, and certainly the incredible staff that Jennifer has put together has been really inspiring. And you know, we're in the food business, obviously. We started out on a farm, 400-acre biodynamic dairy farm in 1986, and have just been expanding ever since. Now we have 6 stores. We're opening our 7th next year. But what's all along what has been part of our mission, which is certainly in line with what Trellis is doing, is to provide really healthy organic products to our customer base, to our communities, and to support other local agricultural, local other farmers and gardeners and artisans, to create, you know, a strong community. Where Trellis has added an element to our passion for supporting local and for bringing really good food to people is their youth program. I mean, it's undoubtedly an exceptional success. When I went to the garden that was shown earlier in the picture, it was amazing that all the young people were actually working hard. It wasn't a photo op. They were really, and it wasn't easy work. Digging up grass is difficult work, but the esprit de corps was incredible and very, very inspiring. That alone makes Trellis worth supporting. And then add to that all of the learning that goes on with the young people, the bringing of that healthy food into their communities. Sorry. So we've have just finished a couple of years ago a $125,000 commitment to the Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Agriculture. And now we've entered a similar $125,000 5-year commitment to Trellis, because they really are bringing it all to home, all home in every way. So thank you for everybody who's on this call, everybody who's already supporting Trellis, and I hope other people will do the same, because they really are the heart of sustainable agriculture, sustainable food systems, community, and we're just proud to be part of it.
Thank you so much, Terry. I appreciate those amazing words. All right, so we're next going to hear from Nicole Benkert, who is the Food for All Garden Champion over at Vanguard. And she is going to take a few minutes to tell us about their relationship with Trellis. And here's a quick shot of their garden. So Nicole, I'll pass it to you.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Benkert, and I'm the co-lead for the community garden at Vanguard, or as we call ourselves, the Vanguardners, because we do love the vegetable puns. Anything you can come up with a pun for, David can attest, we will be there for. Our relationship with Trellis began over a decade ago. Vanguard has 3 pillars that we are committed to: our clients, our crew, and our community. And this really helped hit, community and crew for us. About over 10 years ago, after a food drive, like a canned food drive, that we got together with a bunch of our partners and we said, we're great, right? And they said, actually, the landscape has really changed and people are really looking for a lot more healthy options now. Is there any way you can help support us in that? And the way I've heard the story, it was before my time, but was basically, we said, huh. And so luckily we got hooked up with Trellis, and David has been quite the rock. Well, Trellis in general has been quite the rock in helping us pretty much every step of the way in giving back well over, I think, generally about a ton of food every season back into the community. And then it was great. We had like hit a record year in 2019. We were so excited for 2020. Our garden has usually over 120 volunteers from across our buildings in Malvern that come and work in our garden, and it's great and it's wonderful. And we're like, yeah, 2020, that's going to be such a record-breaking year. It was my first year as leader. And so we had planned to do all of our spring planting on March 17th. And you all might remember that the world shut down about March 13th. And so we once again had to pivot. And Trellis was right there with us to pivot. And we're super grateful for that. This is one of, the big programs that we have. We have a lot of support for it within the Vanguard community. Our community steward leadership really works hard to support us. It's great. And so we sat there and we said, well, everything's shut down. Nobody can get onto site. Dave, SAP, you'll probably feel a very similar story to this. Nobody could get there because everyone was at home. And so we said, what do we do? And so we talked to David, we talked to our leaders, and we said, well, you've said all of these community programs where we have people going out into the community and doing volunteer opportunities are all shut down because we don't know what's going on with the pandemic. But the garden is still, it's on site. People can go there on their own. Can we still do this? And they said, let's check. So they checked, and we got special permission to continue doing the garden last year. And I have to say, for a bunch of us, it really was just a lifeline. Just being able to go in there. We had, I think, about 6 people who were super dedicated last year. And we're a little crispy fried burnout at the end of the year, I think. And we just had a really great opportunity to still go in to plant food, to plant crops and to harvest food. Trellis really stepped up with people. Hayden has been our hero throughout all of this. He has just been amazing at stopping by and making sure that we're getting the vegetables out and into the community. It's been great. And then they helped us pivot for this year. David, am I allowed to talk about the Homegrown Heroes? But this year was great because we said, all right, that was really hard since, it was tough for people to get to site. How can we pivot even further so that people can help in their own communities? And so while Trellis stepped in and helped run our actual garden at Vanguard, they also helped us get plants out into our people who are working from home, and so that we could support them in raising over almost 600 pounds of food so far, and about 21 pantries served. So we really were able to continue throughout all of this to contribute back into the community. So I think for a lot of people, they were like, I came into this, I did this, like they did the garden at work when they were at work, and when they were at home, they could do the garden with their families, and they really got to help instill those values, continuing those values further, which was great. So.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
Yeah.
We appreciate you taking the time. All right, so I'm just gonna share my screen for a moment to show everyone our website. Hopefully you've been here before, but if you go up at the top to get involved and navigate to the business page, you will see all of the various ways that businesses can partner with Trellis in many of the ways you heard tonight, maybe a Food for All garden, maybe hosting or sponsoring an intern. We're always looking to grow our board and committees. You heard some people talk about employee giving. So there's a lot of ways that you can partner with Trellis. We'd love to talk to you more about it. So I'm going to pass it back to Jennifer Anderson. We'll get into some breakout rooms for more detail. And then, as the evening comes to an end, if you have any further questions, you can always reach out to us and we will be following up with everyone afterwards. So Jennifer, I'll pass back to you.
Thanks, Jennifer. And yes, it is confusing to have a small staff and have two of us be named Jennifer, but we make it work somehow. No, I really just appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate all of our partners that hung in there with us and stayed to speak and talk about your experiences with Trellis. What we had hoped to do for the last 15 minutes of this is to go into some breakout rooms, thereby people who were interested in talking about a specific aspect, whether it's Food for All. And Grace, if you can share, I'm not sure if you're sharing, but if you can share the list of breakout rooms, that'd be great. If you want to move in and talk about board seats, if you want to talk about individual giving or volunteering, you want to talk about Food for All or youth programs, any of those are options. And certainly you can follow up with any of us individually, by email. And I guess, you know what, Jennifer, I don't think we put our emails on a slide, but we'll be following back up with you. So don't worry, you'll be able to get in touch with us if you'd like to talk further. But just a big thank you to everyone. We're going to close out at this point and move into breakout rooms. If you're not interested in joining a breakout room, that's totally fine. Just be on your way. Have a nice evening. Those of you that want to stick around, that's great. But again, from our team and all of our partners, we really appreciate you being here with us tonight. And we look forward to continuing the conversation, as I said before.
All right, so Grace has just opened the breakout rooms. For those who might not be very familiar, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a 4-box that says breakout rooms. They're all listed there. You can choose to hear more about Food for All, youth programs and sponsorship, volunteering and individual giving, or board and committees. All right, so hopefully we'll see you in the breakout rooms. Everyone have a great evening.